Oh, yeah, I think it is me
Councillor
first.
Carr, you will take over the chair once the mayor has started the meeting.
Oh,
Okay. Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. I didn't look at the script. I should have looked at the script. Here we go. 1 second, please. Great. So welcome to the Reconvening Vancouver City Council special meeting of Monday, September 14th, 2020. Council, for the purposes of confirming we have quorum, please ensure your video is turned on. This special council meeting is convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedural Bylaw, the City of Vancouver Electronic Meetings Regulation. And just before I continue here, if folks could just make sure you're on mute, because I can hear some breathing in the back. By the Public Safety and Solicitor General, Province of BC, Emergency Program Act Ministerial Order Number M192. And as such, council members are participating by phone, and I am also participating by phone as chair. This council meeting has been called for the purposes of discussing options for emergency COVID-19 relief for unsheltered Vancouver residents. And if the chair's connection is lost during any portion of this meeting, we'll recess until the connection is restored. If council loses connection during any portion of this meeting, we'll need to recess the meeting until the connection is restored. If you lose connection during the voting process, we have staff on hand to get you back online quickly. And the information for contacts has been circulated to you. Please let the clerk know if you are leaving this meeting because we need to maintain quorum. And the live stream of this meeting will continue with audio only. Presentations and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Of course, we always acknowledge we're on the unceded traditional territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and thank them very much for their generosity toward all who live, work, and play on this land. And a big shout out, of course, to our amazing city staff who are just doing huge amounts of excellent work during this COVID-19 pandemic. We have a roll call, please, clerk.
Mayor Stewart is in the chair. Councillor Carr?
here.
Councillor Dejanova?
Present.
Councillor Fry?
Present.
Here.
Councillor Swanson?
Here.
Councillor Hardwick?
Present.
Councillor Weeb?
Present.
Councillor Boyle?
Present.
Councillor Dominato?
Present.
Councillor Bly?
Present.
And Councillor Kirby-Young?
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much. The public is strongly urged to listen to the proceedings via the city's website and to follow up on Twitter at VanCityClerk. That's the handle for updates on the progress of the meeting, and it's also being live streamed via YouTube. And that link is tweeted out on at VanCityClerk. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website, and the link to that forum will be tweeted out at VanCityClerk on Twitter. Our business for reconvening this special council meeting is to discuss the motion I brought forward entitled Emergency COVID-19 Relief for Unsheltered Vancouver Residents. And I'm asking Deputy Carr to take over as chair while I participate in the discussion. So if I can turn it over to you, Councillor Carr, to be the chair. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks very much, Mayor. So, councillors, just to remind you, we did hear the registered speakers for this motion. The motion has already been seconded, and so we can now begin debate. Just before I turn over to the speakers list, I will note that it is 25 to 4. Normally, we take a dinner break at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock if we are proceeding into the evening. But as we work through this afternoon, I'll just have you consider that and the fact that if we don't finish by 5 o'clock, we will need a motion to recess for dinner and continue afterwards, or to move beyond 5 o'clock to complete the decision. So keep that in mind as we work through the day. We will start with the debate, and I have Councillor Swanson first on the list. So Councillor Swanson, go ahead.
Thank you. I sent an amendment. I've sent two, actually, but if the clerk could just put up the first one, that would be great. I think this motion really has the ability to deal with a large part of the homelessness situation if it has some tweaks, which I've tried to make in this, if it applies to everybody that's homeless and if we actually fund it. So it's important that we offer housing to all homeless people. If we don't, the ones who don't get housing will still have to be somewhere, and we'll set up more tents. That's why I added a couple more options, one for tiny house villages and one for RV parks, which is what people have told me they need. Can we get that up on the screen?
It is on the screen.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so I think we do have a chance to actually deal with this issue. I know there's a lot of people who are willing to help on the tiny house part. The best option for me is hotels. There are thousands of empty rooms that have their own washrooms, so they're not congregate settings like shelters are, so they're good for protection against COVID. And if we lease them and get different hotels with different management styles, including hotels for people who use and don't use drugs, have pets, partners, want more self-management or peer management, we could help them do this. And yeah, so this amendment says that we offer housing for everyone. And I think if we do this, we could actually begin to tackle this problem.
Great. Okay, Council, I'm going to move us to an amendment queue. Councillor Bai, I'm not sure if you were on the main queue or do want to speak to the amendment, but I'm moving us over to an amendment queue. And if anybody who wishes to speak to it, please put yourself on the list on this queue. Thank you.
Chair Carr?
Yep.
We need a seconder.
Second it, Stewart.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have it seconded by Mayor Stewart and I have Councillor Boyle up first to speak to the amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Boyle, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks. I also was just putting my name on the list. Happy to second it, but happy to support this. I think exploring these options and looking at how each of them would work in terms of how quickly we could get it going and timeliness and cost in terms of being able to bring folks inside in time for winter makes sense. And as Councillor Swanson said, there's been quite a bit of conversation on the tiny home villages idea. And of course, it's not perfect, but neither is sleeping in a doorway or in a tent outside. So I appreciate these options being added and I'm certainly happy to support them.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. Next up, Councillor Weep. Go ahead, Councillor Weep, for up to 5.
I'm also going to be supportive of the amendments. I really appreciate the conversation on tiny homes and want to put a thanks to Councillor Dominato for helping set up and convening some meetings with groups in Seattle and others to really get a better understanding of why the communities down there really kind of have integrated these tiny homes and have been involved and worked to paint them, and they've become part of their community and the importance of that and kind of an alternative between one of the housing gaps that we have in Vancouver. So really appreciate that. And then recognizing that there's a lot of nonprofits currently working with the RVs by City Reach and other places around the city and trying to make sure that we come up with a plan to better support the people feeling in those RVs and around the RVs to ensure that they're more integrated with options and services to ensure that they have places to use the washroom, get access to water. So really supportive of seeing these two come forward, and thanks, Councillor Swanson, for bringing them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Weep. And Councillor Hardwick, you are up next. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think we are dealing with emergency situations, and the key word here to me is temporary. Our long-term goals are to get people in regularized long-term housing, but we know that we've got the winter close approaching, and we've got to get people out of tents and out of parks. So in the motions and the amendment around tiny houses, I find of particular interest, but I think it's really important that we not lock into thinking about these in the long term, but rather focus on these as temporary solutions that are certainly preferable over tents and parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. And I don't see anyone else on the list to debate this. Council, then if you wish, we should have the clerk move us to a vote on this amendment. So the amendment is on the main screen in your chambers, and you'll see it on your own screens. It has a change in A and then 2 additions. Go ahead with the vote.
Councillor Carr, this is, or Chair Carr, this is Councillor Bly. I need a vote assist.
Yes, and Councillor DiGenova needs a vote assist too, Madam Clerk. So could you provide a vote assist to Councillor Bly and to Councillor DiGenova? For Councillor Bly, you're up first.
In favor.
And Councillor DiGenova?
In opposition. Thanks, Chair Carr.
You're welcome. So that passes with 1 in opposition. That's Councillor DiGenova. Okay, thank you, Council. We are now back to the main queue. And Councillor Swanson, do you have anything else?
Yes, I have some. I have another set of amendments.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, so go ahead.
So I think we heard yesterday that it's really important for people who are homeless to be able to have some options and some say in what they have. So I wanted to amend a couple of these to make sure that we talk to them. And actually, I talked to the people in the tent city about this, and they said that they would talk to the city. The staff is afraid they won't, but they said they would if it's done respectfully, which I'm sure it would be. And I think I don't like the idea of shelter spaces, so in C there, so I tried to delete that because shelters aren't good for COVID because they're congregate settings and because people that I've talked to that are homeless really don't like shelters that much, and also because we have a lot of shelters. And then I thought we should add this other letter, I guess would be a D, that staff consult meaningfully with the campers in the park. This is what they asked for yesterday, and I think we can see that it's really important to have the type of housing options that make people feel comfortable and not judged and wanted. And I think if we do some consulting, we can better set up that type of housing and better keep those people into housing when we get it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillors, I am moving us to an amendment queue. If you wish to speak to these amendments by Councillor Swanson, you can put yourself on the queue here.
Chair Carr, we need a seconder.
Oh, thank you. We need a seconder, Council.
Councillor Boyle.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle. Go ahead, Councillor Fry, to the amendment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've submitted an amendment to the amendment for the add letter piece at the bottom. Basically, I think the general intention as far as a lot of this situation is to really recognize unsheltered individuals. And I think what we see in the situation in Strathcona Park is that the camp per se is also an activist camp, and there's other activities that are going on in the camp that aren't necessarily to do with unsheltered individuals. And I want to just really highlight that what I believe our intention here is to really focus on unsheltered folks and getting them into some kind of appropriate triage.
Second, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Thank you. I'm moving us to an amendment Q2, so it's been seconded, and if you wish to speak to this amendment by Councillor Fry, go ahead. Does everybody have, I've seen it in by email, okay, so everybody got it's up on screen as well. If you need a moment to read it. To the amendment, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have a question I guess it's not really to the story. It's actually a question to Councillor Swanson about the original amendment, so I'll take myself off queue.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dominato. So, Council, I am not seeing anyone else on this list to speak, so I will have the clerk move us to a vote on this amendment to the amendment. So that's Councillor Fry's amendment to Councillor Swanson's amendment.
Chair Carr, if I may have a vote assist in favor.
And this one too. Thank you. Councillor Bly and Councillor DeGenova also needs a vote assist.
Thanks. In favor as well, Chair Carr.
Thank you. That is unanimous. So we are back to the amendment that is now being amended by Councillor Fry. Councillor Fry, do you have anything more you would like to say to the amendment?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks, Chair. I support this amendment as amended.
Great. Thank you. And on to Councillor Dominato, speaking to the amended amendment.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And through you, a question to the mover of this amendment, Councillor Swanson. It's just around the suggestion that city staff engage all of this consultation. I'm just wondering if it might be feasible to be considering inclusion of BC Housing staff or other outreach teams, but right now to sort of have it fall completely to our team. I don't think that makes sense given the role of BC Housing and providing a range of supports as well as the different agencies in the city that do the outreach. So I'm just wondering what the intention was there.
That's fine with me. The important thing is to make sure that the housing that people are offered, that they have some options, just like other people have options for housing if they're richer, and that, yeah, that's the important thing. So who does it? If our staff can do some of it and other people can do some of it, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor DeGenova, to the amended amendment.
It's a point of information for you, Chair Carr, to staff, and that is, I understand that with Oppenheimer and with the other encampments that our city has seen, and aside from that, during other times and in other ways, that our homeless outreach team does in fact do this already. And I wouldn't want to prescribe that we continue to do this if they're already doing this, and I'm sure that they do it in a very strategic way in working with BC Housing if they do it. So I was hoping perhaps that's a point of information through you to whoever the city manager deems it appropriate to go to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. City Manager?
Thanks. Yeah, I had a little bit of a hard time hearing there for a moment. Chair, would you mind repeating the question for me?
Yeah. Her question is, are our staff already doing this?
Which?
Oh, so this is
the entire motion, or just the consultation part of it?
It is
homeless outreach.
The homeless outreach, making sure options are available for people.
Maybe I'll ask on that particular component of the question. I'll ask maybe Sandra Singh, GM of ACCS, to jump in.
Sure. Yeah, Sandra Singh here. Thank you. So our homeless outreach team does connect with clients, people who are unsheltered, and try to understand what their housing needs are. They go to the housing vulnerability assessment tool and do have a sense of and work with them around their needs. However, the limiting factor still remains the lack of housing available and the lack of shelter spaces available. And so we do have, and not just our housing team, but also the other outreach teams that BC Housing Fund work on this as well. So I guess maybe Celine, I'll ask you to, Celine Mobliss, our managing director of homelessness services and affordable housing programs. Is there anything further you'd like to add?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, just to add, I mean, I think, you know, and we probably serve over 100 clients every day through the outreach office and are speaking to many more folks outside. And overwhelmingly, the desire is for housing. The only one of the challenges is going out to consult people with what they want. It's a very difficult conversation to have if you don't have anything to offer. So I would be I'd be somewhat concerned, want to think very carefully about the staff that we would potentially send out to do this type of consultation, whether it be in the Strathcona encampment or elsewhere throughout the city, just to ensure that you're not raising expectations with no housing offers being available.
Thanks so much. So our staff already does this. That's my understanding?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Carr. I will also need a vote assist for this at the time.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Councillor Hardwick, on to you. Go ahead.
Yes, a question back on the notion of consulting meaningfully. I wonder what meaningful means. That's the first part of my question. And then in terms of determining people's choices, what if they determine that they want to stay in the park? You know, I'm concerned that there's a large amount of discretion is going to have to go into this. Naturally, I believe that our staff that are working in this area are, you know, really entrenched and working up close and personal on this. But how do we define meaningfully, and what do we do if the choices don't include getting permanent housing?
Is that a question through me?
Yes,
to
the mover. Yes, please.
Okay. So, Councillor Swanson?
Yeah, I think the whole point of this motion is that this is an emergency and we need to report back in 2 weeks that will tell us how we can provide this housing or some housing options that people need. That's the point of this motion. So hopefully we will have some options for people. And all of my experience tells me that if we offer someone a better option than what they have, they'll take it.
And does that include, so not staying in the park?
If we offer people better options, they'll take them. That's all of my experience. For me, the goal isn't to get everybody out of the park. The goal is to offer everyone a decent housing option that will keep them safe and dry and that will respect them and, you know, treat them as nice people and offer them some hope for the future.
Agree 100% with that, Councillor Swanson. I'm just concerned about people that nothing is going to work for and how we resolve that, because it will have to be resolved.
I think there's a very small percentage of people that are in that category from all of my, you know, like 40 years in the downtown east side. If you offer people decent housing, they feel like they've won the lottery.
Okay, I would have to say yes, if it's a specific question, you may go through me, Councillor Hardwick, but otherwise I don't think it should not be a debate or a discussion between different councillors on the floor. But do you have another question, or have you had your questions answered?
No, that's it for me. I just really needed to have an understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, Council, there's no more councillors on the list, so I'll have Madam Clerk, please move us to a vote on this amendment, recognizing that we do need vote assist for Councillors Dominato and DiGenova. Councillor Dominato? Do you need a vote assist?
Chair Carr, I think it was Councillor Bly that did, and my technical issue's been resolved.
Oh,
so
sorry. Great. Okay, thank you. Councillor DiGenova needs a vote assist.
In opposition, Chair Carr, as it's already being done by staff.
Great. Okay. So we are, yes, it has passed with Councillor DiGenova in opposition. All right, thank you, Council. And moving back to the main queue, Councillor Swanson, do you have anything else? You have not too much time, but
No, thank you.
okay, great. Councillor Bly, go ahead. Up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I also have an amendment that was submitted to the clerk on Friday.
Great. Yes. And I believe it's now up on the screen.
Seconder.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Weeb. I think I'll move us straight to an amendment queue because that's what we're going to be discussing. So, Councillor Bly, so I'm going to add you to be able to speak. Oh, sorry. To your amendment.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this amendment is an addition to this to the mayor's motion. I just want to start by thanking the mayor for calling a special council meeting last week to deal with this issue. I think it's an important issue, and quite frankly, I think we've all established through many comments so far that it's an emergency, and Council Weave and myself had submitted a motion co-sponsored together to be on the agenda this week, and it was sort of within the process that we had available to us to provide disaster relief shelters, a framework for disaster relief shelters on a temporary basis. And so in the spirit of collaboration and speeding up action as it relates specifically to Strathcona Park, I am moving this amendment to incorporate the bulk of that motion into the mayor's motion under option 2. It starts, the amendment starts with a statement that council recognizes that the homelessness emergency is a complex challenge, of course, and requires solutions from all orders of government, First Nations, businesses, community organizations, and individuals. And temporary shelters for people experiencing homelessness are not the solution, but that the immediate concerns around public realm, safety, and unsheltered individuals must be addressed by the city. And further to that, option B, the amendment amends option 2, of the mayor's motion to establish a temporary disaster relief shelter framework, and goes through to identify options that it can include help facilitate encampments of Vancouver parks, and specifically Strathcona Park and other public spaces such as sidewalks and alleys, and be reviewed by council within an appropriate time frame to determine how it's working and how to wind it down, to facilitate work through and with BC Housing and Vancouver Coastal Health to look at the intake and referral process, to maximize the limit of individuals within each site, and ensure safety and security, respect and dignity for all. To also facilitate work with engineering, BPD, and other agencies to explore a 300-meter area around any site to reduce any ancillary camping, litter disorder, or criminal activity, and things like that. And then to work with adjacent businesses and residents to develop a feedback mechanism and a good neighbor agreement. And we also want these supports to enable safe spaces for women, harm reduction supports for drug users, housing and health referral, access to water, sanitation, and the like. So a lot of what's in this motion has come from hours of dialogue over the past 6 to 8 weeks with all stakeholders, including Park Board, councillors, residents, both sheltered and unsheltered, stakeholders, partners at the provincial level, to pull this plan together. And as we know, we're dealing with a disaster situation that needs triage support. And this is not to suggest that any one person living at Strathcona Park is being criticized or judged. This comes with an enormous amount of compassion that we need to not do. We need to be doing something. We need to be in action, and we need to be focusing on the right action that is within our means as a local government. That's why this is temporary in nature with a 6-month timeline to then reassess. The province has promised to deliver navigation centers, which would be a new way of helping support folks that are looking for different supports. Many people need housing. Not everybody needs the same kind of housing, so it's looking at each individual and the challenges that they face and supporting them in a more nuanced and individualized way. So I do hope that we can get to a point today where we can offer some direction to staff, clarity for the community, and a peace of mind to this council that we're actively working on a plan that will deliver immediate supports to the community. And it's not going to be perfect. I know we do oftentimes have a world-class effort in our city, and this is not expected to be world-class. It needs to be better than what's in the park, to Councillor Swanson's point, but it needs to be quick. It needs to be nimble, and we need to be responsive to what's happening. So, of course, I hope for the support of council, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Yes, you just a few seconds over time. Thank you, Councillor Bly. Councillor Swanson to the amendment.
Yes, through you, could I ask the mover 2 questions? One is, how many people are you anticipating that this shelter would hold? And 2, what happens to them after 6 months?
That's quite clear in the motion that there is not a number per se, but, and we are putting it to staff to come back with what we can do. We have to recognize that the systemic issues that we're facing here in the city are complex, and we know that the federal government is slowly but surely starting to pay attention to the distributed funds for supportive housing across the country. And it's quite clear that Vancouver and BC have not received their fair share, and being extremely loud about that. So the answer is, in terms of number, each shelter, we understand around 50 to be a manageable number that we can provide appropriate supports, and we'll have to have staff come back and tell us what it is that we can do. And the second part is, in 6 months, we have to keep the pressure on with the province to deliver the navigation centers. We know that there's been housing announcements for January 2021 from the province. And by doing this and framing it as a disaster emergency response, we need the province, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we need the province to continue to provide resources to the city so that they can help folks that are in the park right now.
Thank you, dear. I just wanted to respond that if we had in order to handle all the folks in the park, you'd need 6 of these at 50 each, and with 6 of them with a 300-meter bubble area, I don't know where you could find that. And I think it would actually could be, and just looking at what happened to the hotel around Oppenheimer Park, could be way faster to move people into empty hotel rooms. And I think that's what we should really aim for, is offering people a nice option that is actually dry and where they have their own bathroom, which is really important for COVID, for them not to be in a congregate setting. And also, all the people that I've talked to that are homeless, they don't like shelters that much. There's a lot of problems with shelters. And the people who do, we do have shelters now, and there are people who are staying in them, which is fine. But I think we need other options than shelters. And those hotel rooms are just sitting there, and I think we should go for them.
Okay. That's it for your comments, Councillor Swanson?
For now.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Stewart. This would be to the amendment.
Right. Thanks so much, and thank you to Councillor Bly and Weeb for all the work they've done, both on this amendment, their original motion, and all the consultation with the community. But I do have to say this has been a really whole of council effort where I know everybody's been involved in Strathcona Park, but more broadly looking at homelessness across the city. So thanks so much for all that work, and I have. Through the various emails and things that were going around, try to incorporate a lot of what people said. For example, Councillor Dominato, I mentioned that yesterday, into the original motion. But I'm happy that there's amendments coming forward, so we can all agree and give staff a clear direction. So I'll be supporting this amendment. The one thing that I have might have a little trouble with is B1. Which is about facilitating decampments in Vancouver parks. And I'm just, if I could ask a point of information to the mover of the amendment, Councillor Bly, if you could explain what B1 means in your view?
Okay, this is actually A1, I think, still, under option 3, correct?
It's B1, yep. Facilitate decampments in, whatever's there on the screen.
Whatever it is. Got it. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Councillor, yes, Councillor Bly, I think. Yes,
yeah, Councillor Bly.
Go ahead, Councillor Bly.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate the question from the mayor, and it's a good question. What this does is it clearly states intent as a council, and I think what we have all been working on is working together and collaborating, and we spend hours talking and listening to one another, and extending that to our partners at the park board to support them. We know that the park board is a very part-time role, I think 10 hours a week, and they're dealing with huge issues that go well beyond their immediate mandate when it comes to what is it that the park board does. And so what this does is it explicitly states clear intent that the goal is that camping in parks is not sustainable for anybody, sheltered and unsheltered residents, and that we want to put this together so that what I heard with Oppenheimer and I've heard with Strathcona is the park board finds it troubled to be able to take action if there's nowhere to send people. There's no alternative. They're not going to just clear a park. There's no alternative. So they need an alternative. And also, if we clear the park without somewhere for folks to go, they're just going to go to a different park.
So can I ask you, through the chair, can I ask you, is this a voluntary decampment or a kind of legal injunction-based decampment? Is it which of those two is your intent here with this B1?
I don't have that specificity in mind. I think that's up to the park board what they decide to do.
Okay, because I'm a bit nervous about the injunctions, for example, are not our jurisdiction. That is the park board or the province, as the case of Oppenheimer. So I want to make clear that this would be voluntary. It's the whole motion as it's structured is that it's offering people choices. And so I'm a bit worried this might be construed as us, for example, overtly supporting an injunction. Other than that, I think these are very good additions, and perhaps I can reserve the right with the chair to sever this part out and just listen to the discussion and perhaps vote against B1 if that's what happens. So thanks very much for that, Chair, and I'll cede the floor to Councillor Weeb.
Great. And Mr. Mayor, if you want to sever, just remember at the time we come to voting that you indicate that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Councillor Weeb, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with a lot what the mayor said in the sense that this has been a very collective effort. I first brought the motion forward in early July, hoping to get it on the council table before the end of July, and then conversation with staff and other councillors, as well as the public and others, have kept this process going throughout the summer. And it's been great to see the collaborative effort, and not just with this council, but with other elected officials, with the Vancouver Park Board, and with people from the park. Really appreciate Councillor Swanson coming down to the park by phone while I was there. I think it's been great to see that collectively we can work together and recognize that we are in a dire situation that has our neighbors and friends in really difficult situations. I think we heard last week some speakers that I think really all kind of shook us, and I think that's the kind of conversations we need to have. These conversations are unsettling. This issue has been continuing to go on. It is time for this council to step up and really showcase that we do need to fund these supports. We do need to keep advocating to other levels of government, but these are people that are creating a city that is not the city that we remember or know. These are people that have been in tough situations, if they're sheltered or unsheltered, but the city is needing a change, and this is where we need to step up. And I'm looking forward to the hard work from staff. I know all summer staff have been working on this, and I really appreciate, I feel there's a different tone with our staff in regards to this and a different tone with this council. So I really appreciate all the councillors that have been involved in this. I will be supportive. I appreciate the different amendments that are bringing together, and I think that's how good governance is done. And I hope that we continue to find different ways. This is not the end result. It's not a silver bullet solution, but it's a step forward, and I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the report back from staff.
Great. Okay, thanks, Councillor Wiebe. And moving along to Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have sent in an amendment to the amendment. I think now is the appropriate time to do that.
Yeah. Actually, just let me take a look. An amendment to an amendment should pertain to what is being changed, and I think it looks like your amendment is a totally new clause.
No, you're looking at a different amendment, Councillor Carr. It was the one that I sent in on Friday.
Oh, sorry.
This one.
Sorry, there's a number of amendments around. Okay, so is it up on the screen now?
Chair Carr, we're just going to highlight that for you.
I think that the amendments were deleting the words temporary emergency relief encampment. Is that the one?
Nope. I can speak to it very quickly if you want me to do that now.
Yes, I think as long as it's up on the screen, I think all council should see it. So there's some deletions and then some additional wording, right? This has to do with under A, option 2 and 3.
Mine are purely additions, not deletions.
Okay.
Second from Councillor Dominato.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Kirby-Yung, to your amendment to the amendment. Oh, actually, I'm going to move us to the amendment 2Q. So you may start now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I want to thank Councillor Bly and Councillor Wiebe for their work on the motion that is coming forward to Council next week. I think that it really spoke to the very dire kind of need that we're hearing from the residents of the Strathcona area that we're looking for short-term relief, and also for the folks that are homeless in Strathcona Park to speak to providing some immediate relief while we are working on getting people into, actually a better housing situation. And so that was, I think, the missing piece. And I've been on record and sort of stating that I think we need an expanded winter shelter program. And I think that this does, while the language might be a bit different, I think the sentiment is the same. My amendments are very simple, and they are the additions in the second bullet. When it refers to vacant public or private land that may be owned by the City of Vancouver, to include the province of BC or the federal government, so that we're not only looking at our own land and we can cast the net as widely as possible and find an ideal site. That's the first piece. The second one is on option 3, is to add the words where it says in city-owned buildings, add the words excluding community centers or childcare and daycare spaces. And I think recognizing the pandemic and the fact that we're trying to reopen those spaces now and how important they are for mental and physical health, as well as the friction that can exist between uses for children and some of the challenges that exist with when we're trying to go through some temporary shelters or housing situations. I think that's the spirit of that amendment. And then the third one is on point 1, which is the addition of the words after facilitate decampments in Vancouver Parks to add in consultation with the Vancouver Park Board. Because at the end of the day, realistically, we can put as much effort as possible into looking for funding and solutions in partnership with our senior levels of government. But if we cannot get the park board on board, it is a moot point, and we will end up with an Oppenheimer extended situation. And I think everybody is trying to get to change the sort of status quo and get people into a better situation than in Strathcona Park and provide relief for the neighborhood. So I think that's a piece that's really important, particularly because the park board has 2 motions on their agenda for their meeting tonight, which will follow this one immediately after, about asking us to seek another location. And I think it's really important that we signal reciprocally to them that we're looking to work with them so that we can not be different levels of government working at odds, but that we can be working together towards getting some positive action on this situation. So that's the spirit of the amendments.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Yung. That's all clear. I think councillors are all clear about where those amendments come in. And to the amendments, Councillor Bly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of the amendments. I think they're good additions right across the board, and appreciate the mayor's comments on our role as city council and the role of the park board. And I feel more comfortable actually with the addition of Councillor Kirby-Young's language there. And yeah, I just want to thank you for bringing them forward.
Thanks, Councillor Bly. Councillor Hardwick, to the amendments proposed here by Councillor Kirby-Yung. Councillor Hardwick, you may be muted.
There, is that better?
Yes, it is.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I support the amendments, and I just wanted to pick up on the comment by Councillor Kirby-Yung about the park board and the fact that there is a meeting happening after that this evening that will be informed by our decisions. So I think I just want to have that front and center coming out of this meeting today. So in support. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Council, I don't see anyone else on the speakers list. So, Madam Clerk, if you could take us to a vote on this amendment to the amendment. Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist?
Chair Carr, Councillor DiGenova has to step away for a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Then this vote is unanimous. Great. So back to the amendment. Councillor Kirby-Yung, do you have anything else at this point? This is to the amended amendment.
I will have one additional amendment later, but I'll wait till after we complete the process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep, no problem. Councillor Dominato, to the amended amendment.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And briefly to the amendment by Councillor Bly, fully supportive of it. I think, as has been noted, many of us have been engaging with the neighborhood and community and other leaders within our communities, federal and provincial, and it's become abundantly clear that the status quo isn't really an option. And so we need to come up with innovative measures to enable people to have a safe place to sleep, to bring their belongings, to connect them to social services, but as well to restore our public parks for broad public use. And we've seen emerging tensions taking place, incredibly divisive within our neighborhoods and our communities. And there's a lot of compassion from the residents of Strathcona, but at the same time, they are also struggling and increasingly feeling fearful in their neighborhood as well. And so I see this as a means that's pragmatic to addressing what is, an encampment that is now 3 times the size of what was in Oppenheimer, and I had similar concerns at that time. And so I think we need to explore all options, and I appreciate that this has been brought forward as a thoughtful amendment to the motion on the floor. And so thank you to Councillors Weave and Councillor Bly.
Thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor DiGenova.
Chair Carr, I don't think Councillor DiGenova is back yet.
On the call yet? Okay, no problem. Councillor Fry, to the amended amendment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I really do want to extend my thanks to Councillors Weeb and Bly for bringing this forward, and working with the mayor and finding ways to to integrate this with the emergency motion that the mayor's put forward. I think this is really the direction we need to take. Insofar as this situation doesn't seem to be getting any better, and you know, at the end of the day, we all recognize that these you know, dealing with homelessness and housing is not our immediate role as the City of Vancouver, but our role at the City of Vancouver is to take care of the City of Vancouver. And at a certain point, we need to step up and we need to pressure our government partners to join us on this, but we need to step up and take care of our city. And I really am impressed by all of the colleagues working together to actualize these goals and recognizing that the buck stops here. I'm not sure where it was, where it came from, but I believe the mayor was quoted in some media article, you know, framing how, you know, the previous administration had talked a lot about ending homelessness in Vancouver, whereas Mayor Stewart's framing is more appropriate, I think, in suggesting how we have to manage homelessness in the City of Vancouver, because we as the City of Vancouver cannot do it alone. And I think this is a far more sensible approach to actually getting us to a place where we could end homelessness, not in Vancouver, but in Canada. And I'm very hopeful with this direction. And I do thank folks for reflecting some of the anxiety that's been going on in the neighborhood. And I want to just quickly address the idea of the bubble zone that's incorporated into this. And I think that's a critical consideration when we're talking about these temporary disaster relief shelter systems, because it in many situations, and we've seen this in other jurisdictions, where they've created an actual favorable environment that neighbors want to embrace because it's actually creating a good thing for the neighborhood, and they see that it's doing well, and it's not necessarily burdening the adjacent businesses and residents with increased disorder, garbage, fear, all those kind of pieces, but in fact working together to create a better situation for everybody, and that's including the unsheltered folks. So I really think that this amendment checks off a lot of boxes that get us there, and I'm really grateful for everybody's work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. And Councillor Hardwick to the amended amendment.
Thank you. And I do appreciate some of the new information brought in through this amendment. We touched on it earlier, and that is really the spectrum of needs that people have. Yes, there are people with mental health and addiction issues. There are people that have lost their jobs through evictions and rent evictions. Seniors are disproportionately represented. But the point is, there is no one-size-fits-all model for all of these folks. And I think this amendment really anticipates that, which I think is a great addition. I am reminded, and riffing a bit off of Councillor Fry's remarks, that we are a local government, and you know, really what happens here within our boundaries on our dirt is key. And we're responsible for that dirt, but we just need the other levels of government. We can only do so much. The provincial and federal government cannot download this on it. It's too much for Vancouver to bear. And then off of that, you know, the concern is that will this attract more homelessness to Vancouver from across the country? Unless the feds step up, for example, what's to prevent the homeless from, and this was one of the speakers on Friday touched on this, we don't want to be creating a situation that's come on down, this is the place to go in Canada if you want to be homeless. We need to be dealing with this as a temporary measure, especially to get us through this winter. But we need the feds in particular to step up and help us deal with this, because it is really focused on our city, and it's a disproportionate weight, I believe, for us in Vancouver to be carrying. But the motion, the amendment, I think is a positive addition, particularly in its addressing of the spectrum or cross-section of different people and how they're going to be affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. And finally, Councillor Bly.
Thanks, Chair Carr. Just to close on the motion, I'll be very brief, is just to thank all of Council for their work and engagement on this part of this amendment to the motion, and the broader discussion, of course, as well. And and look forward to, if this were to pass, the ongoing discussions we will need in order for the original intent of this motion to be realized. It can go in many different directions, and so just extending that conversation beyond this meeting in the sense that we'll need to keep ensuring that we stay within our lane as a local government, that we are taking this as a triage response and a stopgap measure. By no means does this mean to take the pressure off the province to deliver what they've committed to in the beginning of 2021. And hopefully, in doing so, we're going to learn a lot about what works and what doesn't work that can help fold into future decision making around how we support homeless folks in Vancouver. Because what we know is that not only is this a regional issue, but it's a national issue, and we have a lot of folks in Vancouver that we've heard stories. The CBC told a story of or a number of stories straight from those residents living in Strathcona Park about how did you get here. And ironically, 3 out of the 4 stories that they broadcast were about being from other parts of the country and saying, let's get out of here. There's no supports here for us. There's nothing here for us. We're struggling, and let's go to BC. And people are really kind there. And they have lots of programs to help people there. And that's from the mouths of those that are living with real lived experience. And so as a local government, we need to lean into that dialogue and continue this conversation with our provincial partners and federal partners, but we need to be really getting into the real conversation about what we're actually dealing with here and what's within our means and what we can take on. The province has spent $92 million just in a couple months leasing hotel rooms. We don't have that kind of money. So we need to really not be throwing out all of these different ideas with unrealistic expectations coming back. We have to be realistic about what we can deliver in support of people so that we're not promising things we can't deliver. That's even more unfair than what's happening right now. So I'll leave it there. I do appreciate the dialogue on this. I think it's an extremely important issue that we're dealing with, exacerbated, of course, by COVID-19. So look forward to continuing this dialogue beyond today.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bly. Although you were closing, Councillor Swanson did add herself. So go ahead, Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, sorry, I should have spoken sooner. I think I'm going to have to, I agree with the mayor. I don't like B1, and I'm worried about the 300-meter bubble zone. I live next to a supportive housing place, which is actually sandwiched right in between a long-term care center and a children's playground. And it's fine. I've never seen a needle, and it's been here for years. So I think, and also all of the people that I've talked to who are homeless, they want options other than shelters. And I think the rest of this motion before this amendment provided those options, like hotel rooms, which are just sitting there. We'd have to find some to lease, but we wouldn't have to find sites and we wouldn't have to service them and all that stuff. So I don't think this amendment is necessary. I think the rest of the motion that has been passed is enough. And I think this one, B1 and B4 are a bit on the dicey side for me in terms of, is it actually going to be, are people actually going to be forced out of the park with injunctions, which I don't think is the way to go. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Bly.
Boyle, but
sorry, Boyle.
Not the first time. Sorry for asking this late, but hearing Councillor Swanson speak, I'm hoping I can clarify through you to the clerk, Chair, that the 2 additional options under what had been A that Council just voted on aren't showing up on the screen in this option, but that they are still there whether or not this amended amendment on the floor passes.
Okay. Actually, if Madam Clerk, you could answer that.
Yes, through the chair, the addition that was approved by council through the amendments will be included in the final vote. This was sent in prior to that being approved by council.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thanks. That's all for me.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Hardwick.
Yes, a similar point to Councillor Boyle. Is there any way that we could see the combined final motion before we vote on it? I was likewise interested to know that the additions in the last amendments would make it into the final version.
Yes, I'm sure that can happen. We're right now in an amendment queue, so we're not in the main queue. We're not in a final vote at this point. We are dealing with an amendment by Councillor Bly, and then we'll go back to the main queue. I think there are more amendments coming, but you will absolutely have a chance to see the final motion and its amendments at that point. Are you not seeing what you need to see right now, Councillor Hardwick, up on the screen?
What I was looking for were the specifics. For example, tiny houses, the tiny homes amendment that was in the prior amendment. I don't see here. There they are. I'm happy now. Thank you.
Okay, glad to hear it. All right, Council, I don't see anyone else joining the list. So, Madam Clerk, if you could take us to a vote on this amendment on this amendment as amended.
And we're going to sever out. Sorry, Madam.
Okay. Yes, you can at this point request a severing. And what would you like to have severed?
I would like B1 severed, please.
Is that possible, Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk, if we can.
Chair Carr, sorry, I was trying to get on the queue. Yes, that would be fine. So
okay,
I would suggest that we start with that one, and then the rest is a package.
Okay. Okay. So, Council, we are voting specifically on the red highlighted text, which is B1. And anybody who needs a vote assist, please let me know.
Point of privilege, Councillor Kirby-Young, could that be a different color? Because it seems to be obscuring the text on my screen because the red is so dark. I'm wondering, I just want to be able to see the final text for the vote. Oh, thank you. That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, that does pass with 3 in opposition, Mayor Stewart, Councillor Swanson, and Councillor Boyle. Okay, so we are now going to vote on the rest of this amended amendment. Mayor Stewart, or Councillor Kirby-Young? Okay, that vote's complete, and it has passed with 1 in opposition, Councillor Swanson. Okay, so we are now back to, thank you, Council. We are now back to the main queue. I believe we're in a main queue now. That's the amendment. So, Councillor Bly, you had the floor. You proposed your amendments. So, do you have anything more you wish to say in the main queue?
I just note that I do have an amendment to the whereas clause that was circulated as well last Friday. I believe I have to move that once the final motion has been decided upon, and that's my intention. So maybe you could just let me know when that's a good time.
Okay, Madam Clerk, maybe you could explain the timing of that. Will it be after we complete all the amendments and we're voting on the main motion, or after we finish voting on the main motion?
Madam Chair, that is correct. We will complete the amendments to the resolution first prior to amending the whereas clause.
Okay, so I will alert you as to that point, Councillor Bly. It'll be after we finish all amendments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one further amendment, which is an addition of a new clause that was sent into the clerk. And the intention of this one, while that is coming up, is that, and I know Councillor Black can certainly speak to this in more detail, but Council has not had the opportunity to formally affirm its support as a Council of the Whole for the call recently by FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for expedited and urgent action with respect to homelessness across Canada's cities, of which Vancouver suffers most significantly when you look at the numbers and some of the challenges that we have. But in recognition of that, the amendment asks that the Mayor write to the federal government, Prime Minister and appropriate ministers to affirm Vancouver City Council's support for FCM's urgent call to pursue a federal initiative, and I'll just paraphrase here, which is to rapidly repurpose on-sale private buildings, which CMHC has identified as coming online as permanent nonprofit housing for vulnerable Canadians, with a focus on two types of buildings, working with nonprofit community housing providers, either to retrofit for people at risk of homelessness, as well as to acquire current moderate rental buildings and protect those housing units that are currently serving an important need in the community. So I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle in conjunction with an interim short-term measure that Council can take. And I think affirming Council support is really important to let the federal government know that we would welcome that leadership and that we are really looking for that investment to come forward from them.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move us to an amendment queue on this.
Second.
Thank you. You beat me to it. Thank you. That was seconded by Councillor Boyle. And I see that there are, I'm going to clear the queue, but I think that these are Councillor Kirby-Young, Dominato, and Bly. You were on a previous queue, I think. So anybody wishing to speak to this amendment, please put yourself forward at this point. Councillor Bly, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, Federation of Canadian Municipalities hosted or held their first virtual September board meetings last week, 4 days of meetings, and this came as a very welcomed announcement on Thursday, and certainly a lot of positive campaigning and affirmation that this is a great initiative right across the country. I think we need to continue to lobby senior levels of government for the funding to help support this. But and I certainly weighed in on behalf of Vancouver as a director on the board, our support for this initiative. And all that being said, I think it's important in the context of this discussion to amend this motion to add in our endorsement and council support in writing, and we'll be sure to share that up within the channels that I can, and appreciate Councillor Kirby-Young's forethought to add this to this motion.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Bly. I do not see anyone on the list to speak, so Madam Clerk, if you could move us to a vote on this amendment by Councillor Kirby-Young.
Point of privilege, Chair Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Gigliola. I am back, and if I could get a vote assist in favor, please.
Thank you very much for raising that. Councillor Boyle, you have not yet voted. Okay, that is unanimous, Council. And we now are back to the main queue. Councillor Kirby-Young, do you have anything else you want to add at that?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to move an amendment in my name, if the clerks could bring that up on screen.
We'll just wait a moment.
Thank you, and thank you to the clerks. So this amendment is in addition to A, where there's obviously a number of options that we're asking staff to explore. And it hasn't been lost on me in both the conversations and dialogue today, but also in public commentary made by the mayor, by other councillors about the critical role and actual jurisdictional mandate that the province and the federal government have with respect to housing, homelessness, and some related issues, including mental health and addictions. And I think it's critical in having a report back around feasibility and costs related to various initiatives to try to address, as I think Councillor Weave said, to sort of manage within the city the current circumstances, that we do have staff report back on confirmation of any provincial federal funding that is available to cover capital infrastructure investments and operating costs. So whether it be to renovate existing industrial buildings that's owned by the city or to have a disaster relief shelter put in place, there's both capital and operating costs related to those. And I have a sense that in at least the provincial conversations I've had is that, there certainly was federal or provincial funding committed to the Navigation Center, which we know is months away. We're obviously seeking to have that expedited through this motion. But I've also had the sense that they would support emergency shelter frameworks and obviously potentially other more permanent housing options. But I do think it's critical for us to know what is on the table or potentially on the table through the political conversations that the mayor and others may be having, but also through the conversations our senior staff may be having with deputy ministers and others in Victoria and Ottawa. So that's the motion, and I think it's just due diligence on our part.
Second, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. And I will move on to the amendment queue for anybody wishing to speak to this. Councillor Swanson, go ahead.
Yeah, I would hope that the province and the feds would pay for this. That would be a huge hope, and I think they should pay for it. But we have a huge problem that is involving actually the life expectancy of thousands of people in our city. And we're in the middle of 2 pandemics. So I think we could dip into our reserves or check out the Property Endowment Fund. I think the problem is serious enough that we need to put our own money where our mouth is if we have to. So I think I will be. I don't like this amendment because the implication with it is that we won't be doing any of this stuff unless we get federal and provincial money, and I think that is wrong.
Great. Okay, thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I will be supporting this amendment because I think it's critical that we have full information so that when this report comes back in 2 weeks, Council can have an informed discussion around the viability of executing the options. And that means not just in terms of qualitatively what we think is going to work, but what we can actually have the resources to do. I have heard commentary that the mayor had made in various media articles that said, you know what, it would be great to have the help, but, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but Vancouver may have to go it alone. And that really concerns me when one of the options, which is already being executed by the province around buying hotels, you're talking tens of millions, could be a couple $100 million. And we've got some significant financial issues. When I hear comments, Councillor Swanson just mentioned that we may have to dip into the PEF or the Property Endowment Fund. That has really specific governance around it in terms of trying to utilize, that's probably the biggest asset that we have in the city of Vancouver, and we're trying to protect that asset and the value of it in order to make the best use of it for the residents of Vancouver. And that includes, having a long-term view on the assets in the Property Endowment Fund and the way they can be maximized in terms of delivering sustained affordable housing in some cases for specific sites. And those are deep and important discussions. So I want to be able to make some informed conversations. I think that the conversation we're having today is setting the stage, but I think the more difficult conversation is going to be the one we have in 2 weeks. I think that we need the information and we need to know what we can do. We can't simply suggest going it alone or we won't be effective. We're not going to get there, and we need to put some pressure on, and we need to know. Honestly, it doesn't make sense to me for Vancouver to pick an option and then discover that it's not one that is sort of acceptable to the senior levels of government, and they wouldn't fund it. So I'd like to get an indicator, even if they're high-level indicators and temperature checks around which are more preferred options from them, and where we think we can collectively be more successful, because the point of this exercise should not be political. It should be about getting immediate relief for the residents of Strathcona, both the folks that live in the area that are housed and the people that are unsheltered that are in the park. And I think if we keep that in mind, that's what we need to figure out is what can the city, what's the best that the city can do with the resources we have, where do we play a part, and the other folks have to come to the table, because I think everybody agrees that what we're doing right now isn't working in the absence of that external support. So those are my comments, and I think that this is prudent for us to get as much information back as we can as part of that report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks. So as I read and reread this amendment, I see it as a due diligence piece, not a condition of us acting or not acting as prescribed here. It's really just to have clarity. So I'm wondering, Chair, if through you I could just get that confirmation from the mover of amendment that in fact this is just about due diligence. It's not a condition of action.
Absolutely. Councillor Dominato?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is indeed the intent here, is to get as much information as possible to inform decision making. As I understand, that different levels of government are looking to get some sense of what the city would like to do, and that funding might flow if we give a clear message as to our priorities and how we want to help our citizens. So yes, it's due diligence.
Okay, thank you. That's I'm comfortable with that.
Great, thanks, Councillor Fry. Councillor Boyle. You may be muted.
Yes, thank you for that. I too was going to ask about the language in this that makes me cautious is confirmation of provincial or federal funding, because it's clear to me that we need to act quickly, and we have been asking for this funding for a while. I'm not interested in having us wait until we have confirmation of some senior levels of funding to act. I think we need to be asking, continuing to plead for that help and funding concurrently with moving forward with the options that come forward. The original language in the mayor's motion already asked for costs, and so the confirmation language in here doesn't work for me, but I see Councillor Hardwick's on the list. I'm just going to see if I can come up with language I'm more comfortable with and as an amendment and circulate it. So that's it for me for now.
Okay, work fast. Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Hardwick.
Well, I 100% support this amendment. I think we can never state enough that this is really the responsibility of the senior levels of government, and to download it onto, our 115 square kilometers from Boundary Road to the University Endowment lands and make it the single responsibility financially to the people of the city is just not on. We have to do everything that we can to push for provincial and especially federal funding on the housing file. So, I'm satisfied that, this whole motion is really about going back to staff and coming up with the best plan possible. And I can't see how getting confirmation of what's going on with the feds and the province could be detrimental in any way. So I support.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. And Councillor Boyle, I see you have forwarded an amendment to the amendment.
Yes, I have, and it is pretty simple, and hopefully it reflects what Councillor Fry was asking and confirming was the intent of the language, was not that we put all action on hold until receiving confirmation, but that the information in doing our due diligence, the information that we consider includes possibilities that staff have received information on about options for funding, I think it's really important that we look at these options and continue to move forward and not wait if that additional funding from senior governments isn't coming. We're hearing so clearly that this is something we need to keep moving on, and I appreciate the leadership that has been shown across the board on council on committing to action here, and I would hate to see us just sit on a plan until some possible funding comes in. I think we need to keep moving forward. So this language I'm more comfortable with. Thanks.
Okay, I need a seconder for that, and then I'll move us to a amendment clause.
Fry.
Great. Okay, thank you, Councillor Fry. Anyone wishing to speak to that, just add yourself to the list. Go ahead, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate the spirit in which Councillor Boyle is bringing forward the amendment, but I think, again, and I'll speak very clearly, as I stated clearly my intent of the amendment, and it was very clear verbally what I intended. It's clear in writing, and I think that we need to focus on advocacy towards the provincial and federal governments. I know that the mayor and others have been doing that on an ongoing basis, but to ask for a report back to include information as to whether there is provincial and federal funding on the table, possibly, as Kirby Young noted, to even have some sense, some indication of where they lie. I think that is a very reasonable expectation of our staff to bring back that information in concert and conversation with the mayor, given he will be having quite a number of political conversations at the provincial federal level. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Okay, and I do not see anyone else on the list. So I believe, Madam Clerk, you can move us to a vote on this amendment to the amendment. Councillor, okay, Councillor DeGenova, do you need a vote assist?
I do. Thank you, Chair Carr. If I could get a vote assist in opposition. Thanks. Okay, that passes with 7 in favor and 4 in opposition. Councillors DeGenova, Hardwick, Dominato, and Kirby Young. Great. Okay, we are now back to the amended amendment. Councillor Boyle, if you were on the list for that.
That's it for me. Thanks, Chair Carr.
Okay, Mayor Stewart, to the amended amendment.
Oh, no, I'm fine. Sorry, that's a mistake.
Okay. Then I think we are, Madam Clerk, I believe we have to vote on this amended amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so we'll be voting on the amended amendment. And just, we have to go through the list this way. Councillor DeGenova, do you need a vote assist?
Yes, in opposition, please. Thank you.
Councillor Dominato, do you need a vote assist? Are you good to go?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I voted. Is that not recorded? Are we voting on the amended amendment?
Amended amendment, and I do not have your vote recorded.
Oh, I had. Okay, I'll do it again.
Thank you. Okay, so that passes with 1 in opposition, which is Councillor DeGenova. Okay, we are now back, Council, at the main queue, but because we are at 4:54, I would like to have us consider the
motion to extend and to continue the business.
Second.
Councillor Bly, is that to complete the business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. This is a motion to extend. You can debate this. It's a motion to extend to complete the business. This is extend past 5 o'clock. Councillor Dominato, are you on the list to speak to that or no?
No, that's a carryover.
Okay.
Point of privilege.
Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
I will also have a small absence during that time. I mean, during the time in between 5 and 6 p.m. I will try my best to be here for the vote. I would hope that I could be, but might not be able to. So I hoped we'd have a regular break, although the meeting convened at 3:30 didn't mean our day started at 3:30. So I'll support this, but just wanted to state why I might be away or that I might be away.
Thank you for that information, Councillor DeGenova. Council, I'm just going to ask for a yay and nay at this point. All those in favor of extension to complete the business, state yay.
Yay.
Yay. Any in opposition, state nay. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Council. So we're back to the main queue. I see no one on the main queue.
Point of privilege.
Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks so much. I was just wondering, Chair Carr, I had an amendment that I put forward, and I put it forward and sent it in through the proper process on Friday and was hoping that it might be able to be brought up. I think it's quite simple. It would ask for more of a regional approach, also looking at this through Metro Vancouver, and I'd be asking that the mayor take this to the mayor's committee, because that reaches all of the municipalities, and then usually their reports or decisions come back to the main board. But otherwise, every municipality isn't represented on every committee, so I was hoping that that could be brought up. I think I've already explained it. If there's any questions for me, happy to answer those, but I really do think that we need to consider a regional approach to this, and there may be homeless people who come to Vancouver not because they want to be here, but because there is nothing else appropriate for them in Metro Vancouver. And I do think that we do need to, in parallel with everything we're doing now, have that regional approach. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, it's up on the screen now. Councillor DeGenova, I'm going to move us, Council, to an amendment queue. Mayor Stewart, you happen to be on that amendment queue as well as the main queue. Are you there to speak to this amendment?
No, I'll second this, but I don't need to speak to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Weeb, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be voting in support. Throughout the summer, a lot of the talk was what a regional approach could look like, and speaking with staff and organizations like Homefront and other things, I think that we do need to bring on this lens, even though most of the work we're talking about right now is kind of triage and short term. I do like that we look at what it could look like to fold this into a regional approach, so I will be supportive.
Thanks, Councillor Weeb. To this amendment, Councillor Hardwick.
I also support the amendment. It's clear that Vancouver has become a magnet for the region, and it's important as we look at solutions in the long term, especially that we find ways to have a more distributed approach to dealing with homelessness throughout the region. So I think a regional approach is a no-brainer.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Hardwick. And no one else on the queue to speak. So, Madam Clerk, if we could have a vote to this amendment. Councillor DeGenova, do you need a vote assist?
I do. In favor, please.
Okay, that passes unanimously. We are back to the main queue. Councillor DeGenova, do you have anything else you wish to add to this discussion? We're in the main queue.
On a point of information, if I might, with some of my time there, I know that on Councillor Bly's amendment, I wasn't present. I understand that now we're back to the main motion, and that amendment has passed into there. I had a specific question around the bubbles for staff, and I was wondering if possible to have that question answered through a point of information, Chair Carr, if now would be the appropriate time.
Now is the appropriate time, Councillor DeGenova. So, Mr. City Manager, this is actually, I'm sorry, who are you directing your point of information to?
It's actually a question of public safety, and it would be on an issue that I would suppose would probably be addressed by the police. But when we're talking about sort of criminality and, drawing zones around to either keep criminal activity out or inside those zones or paying special attention to that, I was just wondering if under the current resources that the VPD has, and especially thinking about Strathcona Park right now and some of the safety issues that we've all been hearing about in downtown, if there's extra resources or if there are adequate resources within the VPD's resources to currently address this. Thanks, Chair Carr.
Okay, Mr. City Manager?
No, that was a question for the VPD if they're on the line.
Yeah, thanks. I think we got the question. I just wanted to see if Deputy Chief Howard Chow is on and can speak to that from the policing perspective.
I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. It is Howard Chow, so thanks for the question. And it is, if this is the position of council to incorporate the 300-meter area, we'd work with city staff, to flesh out all the details surrounding it. There'd be consideration, obviously, if there's criminal activity, we would obviously still be involved very much dealing with it. If it's just a resource as a security type function, just a presence type function, really challenging. Simply, much like Strathcona, much like Yaletown and Granville Mall area, we do move bodies into there, but know that we don't have the bodies that are sitting by. They're actually pulled from other areas to deal with that. So, it's the criminal side of things. We will step up and deal with that. We'll work with city, but it's just the resources would be stretched if it's a permanent type situation where you're wanting teams to kind of float around that 300-meter zone. So these are things we can work out with city staff.
Thanks so much. And just further to that, I haven't quite understood if these disaster relief shelter areas are encampments or not. Would there be more of an issue, Deputy Chief Chow, with that being an encampment versus like a modular housing structure? For criminality?
The challenges with encampments to some degree is just, the relationships with those inside and the leadership groups. And I think it was mentioned by a few councillors earlier on in terms of, some are going to work well if police are called. Others are going to be more resistant and to some degree hostile to police. So that makes it a bit difficult. It's better if there are service group providers that are there that can kind of deal with the day-to-day things. And if police are needed, then we would show up and attend. But we're always proponents if it can be managed by a service group provider, and if you require police, then we'll come and deal with that, and just having that sort of a mechanism, buffer zone, if you want to call it, or buffer in there to help with those matters.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate the answers to that question.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Mayor Stewart, on to you for the speaking to the amended motion.
Thank you very much, Chair Carr, as well as the entire council and staff for this. We are in a really tough situation. People are seeing changes in their neighborhoods they've never experienced before, and it's adding to the stress of COVID-19. And as we know, we've seen many people now finding themselves homeless or living without homes, and that is unimaginable stress. So I think we do have an important work to do here on this to respond to the community. But we really have to keep in context that this is because of COVID-19. Our shelters have been thinned out. We can't have the same capacity we've had in the past. We don't have guest policy anymore in many of the SROs, if not most of them. And so this has really caused ripple effects through all our communities. And I just wanted to thank Council for doing all the work they did over the summer. And I know that we can do this. I know that the city can meet this challenge. And again, just wanted to thank you for your time today. And and I know that this will be a daily conversation until we see movement forward. And I know that's what people are expecting of us. So thanks again, and thank you, Chair Carr, for doing such a great job.
Oh, thanks, Mayor Stewart. So we are talking, councillors, about this amended motion. Councillor Kirby-Young to the amended motion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a few comments to make here, and I think I just want to step back for a minute about what we're aiming to do here, which is in extraordinary circumstances where we are seeing a very significant homeless issue, which has been sustained over a number of years in Vancouver, has been exacerbated by a pandemic because of a number of factors that have been mentioned, such as people not being able to have guests in SROs and the closure of different civic facilities that happened in the downtown east side that took away those spaces that people could spend time during the day, have showers, do all those sorts of things. We have seen this significant encampment growing at Strathcona, and we've seen dramatic, it's not a good living situation for anybody that is there. Yes, we want to move people towards more long-term housing, but we also are trying to be responsive to the residents of Strathcona and the livability of the neighborhood. And it has spawned a number of consequences which have not been beneficial for anybody. And I really want to emphasize the fact that these residents have felt that abandoned, that they haven't had more immediate response. The crime issues are growing, and these concerns around safety are very real. We've heard the reports of incidents of crime affirmed by the BPD. We've heard a lot of incidents from residents. It's not fine when people are worried about sort of guarding their back or their kitchen doors, and people do need some of that relief, but we need to do it in a way that we can put people that are unsheltered into a sort of a workable situation for them during this interim period. And so I think that the nature of the emergency response really has to be emphasized here. I would have preferred, and I'll just speak plainly, that we had this conversation as we were slated to have with the motion that was on deck at council next week, that really zeroed in on a specific solution that had not been really focused on and considered before in response to this specific exacerbated moment in time. And I think it did cause a lot of confusion by having a special meeting called as well, where we've had members of the public and others that are trying to digest what these different motions mean and what is really different or new. And so when I look at the three options that were indicated in this motion for the special council meeting of the three components, option 1, 2, and 3, option 1 is already underway with the province. They're doing that in terms of leasing or purchasing housing units. And yes, there's been some issues associated with it, but it's underway. Option 3 also happened during the pandemic, temporarily converting city-owned buildings when we saw use of some of the community centers, and we saw some of the challenges associated with that as well. And so I think that the motion that was on deck for next week really intended to bring forward a specific, fresh, a bit more out of the box type of solution to moving forward. And I think the focus is really, really important sometimes. So there's some comments on that. I'm deeply concerned.
And if you could wrap your comments up, you're at time, but go ahead to complete the last thought.
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned with council taking out language around decampment. I'm not sure what message that sends to the residents of Strathcona that we're not aiming to do that, or to the Vancouver Park Board that we're not aiming to provide a very viable solution that will enable people to leave the park. I'm deeply concerned about taking that out, and I'm deeply concerned about the suggestion of the city going it alone, because we're only going to be successful if we can work with our partners, and that means consulting with them on what they're going to support. So those are my comments on the motion.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillors Fry and Swanson, you're on the list. I just want to make sure, are either of you tabling further amendments?
No, I'm not.
I'm not.
Okay. I'll allow you to speak in a second, but I would like Councillor Bly to get herself on the list so you can table an amendment to the whereases. Councillor Bly? Good. Okay. Great. Go ahead,
Chair, I'm wondering if before you start my timer, just a quick point of information to Councillor Kirby-Young's comments. I did not think that the language around decampment was struck from this motion.
No, it's not.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. You can start my timer now then, thanks. Appreciative of all the work that's gone into this motion, appreciative of all the conversations. This is a real move for us as a city stepping forward to deal with this and address the well-being of all the residents of Vancouver. I'm incredibly appreciative of the disaster relief language that's been incorporated in this motion as amended. We are dealing with three concurrent crises, obviously COVID-19, but the opioid overdose crisis and the homeless emergency, which we declared at this council earlier this year. And under any circumstances, this would be considered a disaster. And I think by framing this around disaster relief, we are putting our senior government partners on notice saying this is a real disaster and we need to triage it as we would any disaster, be it wildfires or floods or earthquakes. And so there's a role for us to pull together and deal with this crisis as it's rolling out in real time. And I don't want to make it sound though that the province has not been contributing. I know many of us have had really important conversations with ministers and senior staff at the province, and there has been a willingness to put money into supporting folks who are unsheltered and living in encampments. So I think this is a recognition, and especially through the important and critical distinction of talking about how this will facilitate decamping of parks, so that we're recognizing parks are a valuable green space for everybody's enjoyment, for all people to share, including housed residents and unhoused residents, and finding more appropriate spaces to triage this crisis while we try and get folks into real housing. Because definitely I think we're all in agreement that the status quo is not working. I do have to make a comment for the record and correct an allegation that was made against me on Friday by the director of the Carnegie Community Action Project that suggested I'm a vigilante. I've lived in and around Strathcona in the downtown east side for the better part of 30 years. I observe open drug use, and I often engage with homeless people on a regular basis, and never with vigilantism or intolerance or even rudeness. I reacted to threats of sexualized and weaponized violence against a woman. I did what I had to do to protect her. I did not hurt the man in the video. He was acting aggressively, and I moved him out of the situation. And under those same circumstances, I would do the exact same thing again. It was not an act of vigilantism. I was preventing violence against women. But this narrative has been part of a very specific targeted campaign by certain activists on social media in an attempt to silence me. And to the extent that I'm a politician, I guess that's what we sign up for, and that's fine. However, I do need to highlight that this is also how things have been playing out in the neighborhood. Folks living in Strathcona in particular have been expressing legitimate concerns and fears and being bullied and humiliated or gaslit. And that's just not okay. As long as I've lived in this neighborhood, we've coexisted with homeless people, people who use drugs, sex workers, folks with mental illness, and a variety of vulnerabilities. The fact is it's the size, scale, and impacts of the current encampment on the adjacent communities that has been so significant. We know that the deputy chief said on Friday that weapons calls are up by 50% and break-ins are up by 68% since the encampment. Every day I hear from folks in the neighborhood who are frustrated or scared, angry with break-ins and threats and random violence. As of this morning, there's a massive pile of scorched and festering garbage on Hawks Avenue that's been sitting there rotting since last week. And the neighborhood is rightly, and the folks in the camp are feeling abandoned. This weekend I learned that a young friend of mine has been having recurring nightmares about people from the camp breaking in and killing his family. He's 8. So this is a very complicated situation, and I think that really points to where we have to step in and really manage this more appropriately. It's not fair to pin this all on the encampment because it's an organic thing. It's not fair to pin this all on homeless people because it's an incredibly stigmatizing thing. So this is an opportunity for us to really try and calm kind of the situation and make sure that we're really protecting everybody in our city and making this city the best it can be for whether folks are housed or unhoused. And I'm just really want to appreciate all the work that all of my colleagues here have been doing to put this all together, and our colleagues at other orders of government, and of course the hardworking staff who consistently show up and do this difficult work. So I'm really grateful for us taking this step in this new direction, and I'm hopeful for some rapid resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. And Councillor Swanson, go ahead.
Is this the last time to speak on the motion?
Correct.
Can we sever?
Yes.
I'd like to sever. I need it up on the screen to see what to sever. I'm definitely going to vote for part of it. I think there is a possibility that the report that we get back from staff could actually go a long ways to solving the problem, especially if we fund it. I did want to say something about last Friday when one of the speakers who was referring to people who don't have homes said, we're dealing with people that have limited capacity as adults. And if we make them too comfortable living in misery, there's no incentive to make change. I regret that I didn't call a point of order then and ask the chair to advise speakers that poor bashing shouldn't be allowed, just like insulting remarks against the police and city councilors shouldn't be allowed. So next time I'm going to try and do better on that. I hope something can come of this motion, that we actually get some hotels and some housing for people that they want, that we get better options for them. And I think we can do it if we have the political will, which also means we may end up having to fund it if the feds don't come through.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Swanson. And on to, I think Councillor Blythe, well, you can speak to the motion at this point, not to your amendment, but to the overall motion. I'll tell you when you can speak to your amendment to the whereases.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Chair. So I'll just echo much of what Councillor Fry has shared in the hope. I, too, am hopeful that we're able to provide clear direction to staff with this motion, and in doing so help those most vulnerable in the park while supporting the park board to lead under their mandate and offer some relief for residents in the surrounding areas. And of course, with the unhoused residents that are in the park. So I think at the end of the day, what we've recognized after this long 3 months for those directly affected is that local governments, us, have a responsibility to take action in a disaster and an emergency. And we saw great response during COVID, the COVID pandemic, in the outset back in the spring. We know we can't delay action. That's become very clear. And we certainly can't delay action while looking for funding. So we know we need to act now. And by the whereas clause that I intend to move sort of outlines emergency measures, and then the name of this or the language within the amended motion around disaster relief is to really set the tone that we cannot wait to get funding. In my view, I think that we need to be able to justify our action and send the bill to the federal and provincial governments. All of this cannot be stated without also speaking to the humanness of the situation. People in the park are first and foremost individuals that are facing unique and in some cases debilitating challenges. Painting all people with the same homeless brush fails to address the root cause and therefore does not create sustainable change to that person's life. They are not victims. They are people with a deep knowing of themselves who need to be listened to and supported in that way. That is the nature of the amendment that's been moved. That was the nature and the intent of the motion put forward by Councillor Wiebe and myself, was to triage. And by triage, much like coming into an ER, you sit down and you talk about what's going on, and then the person there listening to you starts to navigate and direct you towards the services that are going to best meet your needs. That I feel to be the absolute critical part of our next work as a council. And by doing so, I believe we are trying something different, and we may find we can create a new and better result for all of the residents in the city. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and know that the real work is going to start after this meeting ends and we start to work with staff and get report backs and have to make some really tough decisions. But intent is a very important part of everything we do, and I wanted to clearly state my intent there. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bly. And Councillor Hardwick, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's clear that the status quo is untenable. We have to do something. The question is what and in what order do we do things? I've been watching the unhoused situation and the situation in the downtown east side. I think back through the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s, the lead up to when the last council sought to end street homelessness by 2015, and yet here we are. And the problem has been exacerbated by this pandemic. So it's not just the people that were dealing previously with mental health and addiction issues as described, but it's also people that have been displaced from their homes through loss of jobs, eviction, and rent eviction. And there are, demographically, some groups in our society are more represented than others. So I really do appreciate the triage approach that Councillor Bly just described. As I have pointed out, though, we are talking about the city of Vancouver, a very limited amount of land here that is, unfairly, there's no such thing as fair, having all of this downloaded onto us. And again, when I look at the people the homeowners and renters of the city, this puts a lot of pressure on them too. I know that seems like nothing when you're living in a tent, but people across, again, all of the socioeconomic spectrum are struggling in our city right now, and we have to be mindful of that. It also concerns me when I hear the thought that we should, pay the bill for this and hope that the senior levels of government are going to come back and reimburse us. In my experience, that's very unlikely to happen. We need commitments up front, and we need them fast. But all that said, I do think that there are temporary measures that we can make, and I emphasize the word temporary here. Particularly coming into the winter, we can't have people living in tents and this, order of magnitude. It's critical that we come up with temporary measures while we figure this out in the larger scale. Again, the regional approach that was brought in through an amendment by Councillor DiGenova, I think, plays an important role, just as holding the senior levels of government responsible, because the truth is that we have become, the repository. You don't see the same level, and you certainly don't see encampments like we have in Strathcona in the other municipalities in Metro Vancouver. It's a big chore, and it's a complex one. And I'm glad that we're not pretending that we're going to solve this, by 2022. We're not. But if we can get it 6 months further down the road and get solid roofs over people's head, especially when the temperature goes below zero, we will have accomplished something. And I liken this back to the way city had to respond during the Depression in 1929 in the early 30s, and after the Second World War, when there was drastic housing shortages. The city has always stepped up. And so, again, I applaud this council for dealing with this complex subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. And Councillor Swanson, you're out of time, but I'm assuming you're going to ask me to sever certain sections?
Yeah, B1 and B4.
B1 and B4. Madam Clerk, you've got that, a note of that?
Point of privilege?
Yes, yeah. Yes, go ahead, Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks so much. Could you tell me how much time I have left on the queue there, Chair Carr?
If you, sorry, I'll have to add you to the queue first to see that.
Thank
so
you.
1 second. It looks like you have 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Thanks so much.
Yep.
I'll also ask for every section to be severed separately, and if we could get that emailed out. But just really would like to.
Oh, actually, you're not on the, Councillor DiGenova. Oh, you're not on the queue yet. You're
my apologies.
Yeah, I'll announce when you are. But meanwhile, I'm just going to complete with Councillor Swanson. Are you? So you've got your 2 sections severed. Okay, thank Councillor Swanson. That's fine. Councillor Wiebe, go ahead to the amended motion.
Yeah, I'll be supportive of the full motion and really appreciate all the amendments that have been brought forward. I think the key to this has been the openness of the conversation throughout the summer, and I think that the dialogue has changed, and I think COVID's really recognized that we need systems changes in so many different areas, and this is definitely one, dealing with homelessness and people dealing with other issues. Because when I was down to the park, the main thing we hear is trauma. And so I really appreciate that one of the things that's been brought into this motion is it's trauma-informed solutions that are also going to recognize the really significant issues facing so many people in this city, and recognizing that with COVID, it's only going to make it worse. And we're only moving forward down a path that I think, if we don't do solutions now, are really going to make it harder for each and every person in the city of Vancouver to recognize how they can be a part of a functioning society and feel connected. We've lost a lot of people to the opioid crisis, and we continue to lose connection to each other and to this place. And so I'm hoping that working together here, that connection can be regained. So really appreciative of the work done on this motion, and just the connections with people. The park board had great communications with council on this, and I think that's really integral, is working collectively with provincial colleagues and park board colleagues to recognize what is the well-being outcomes we want, how do we work together to get there, and making sure we kind of push forward to get there. So really appreciative of this. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Weeb. Councillor DiGenova. Councillor DiGenova, you're on the queue now.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. To be severed, please, first of all. And I just wanted
what
to
are you severing? Councillor DiGenova, what are you specifically severing?
I'd like each letter specifically severed. Thank you very much, Chair Carr.
There are letters, but what? Just each letter, not anything.
Each part, yeah.
Each overall letter. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Fine. And I would I'd just like to thank everyone and thank our staff for the work that they've done, especially our homeless outreach team. And I also would be remiss not to thank BC Housing and the federal government, to whom which this is their responsibility. And I think we have to keep advocating for that. And if we show that we can't collaborate, I think there's issues there. But overall, I think really what we have to do is we need a regional approach here, and that's why I put forward that amendment on a regional approach, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with Metro Vancouver. That being said, that's about an approach. The funding I still expect to come from BC Housing and the federal government, and I think there's a lot of ways Vancouver can contribute, but the Property Endowment Fund is not one of them, although it does contribute already to helping with the crisis. I don't want to see permanent encampments become the epicenter of homelessness here in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. I think that there are people who want to live in their municipalities, but certainly don't have that option. So I think that we need to move forward together with other levels of government to make sure that each municipality has the funding and the resources and the supportive funding they need. Because if we just keep asking for more housing, we will get into a situation where we see people like the one reported about recently in the news. I'm just wrapping my last sentence here, Chair Carr, that unfortunately choose to live in Strathcona Park when they actually have an SRO room. So we need more supportive housing, and I'll be advocating for that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DiGenova, well over time, but thank you. Councillor,
sorry, wouldn't have been if we weren't breaking.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Oh, it's okay. I was going to ask for a point of privilege for the motion, and I see it's been emailed. Thank you.
Okay, and we've got it up on and emailed. Okay. I'm just confirming it has been emailed to everyone. Okay. Council, I just want to confirm whether or not you want a recess to review the whole motion.
I would appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. If you're asking, I can't put myself on the queue. Point of privilege.
Yeah. My suggestion then is that we have a 5-minute recess to review the motion, and just to let Councillor Bly know that we will vote on the motion, then add yourself to the list, and you can introduce an amendment to the whereas, and then after that, we will vote on the amendment to the whereas, and then on the whole motion, including the whereases. So,
point of procedure.
Yes.
I think we're going to vote sever according to letter, but there's lots of sub-letters, so I'm wondering if the sub-letters, I guess B 1 and 4 are sub-letters that are going to be severed, but I'm wondering if all the other sub-letters are going to be severed.
There's been no request for that, Councillor Swanson, so right now we're severing the letters and taking out B1 and B4 separately before voting on the rest of B.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, and that's Councillor Swanson. That was your question. You're done.
Yep, I'm done.
All right. So 5-minute recess, Council, to just review the actual motion, and then we will come back and proceed with the vote. So, Madam Clerk, I'm ready to go again.
Okay, thank you. We'll put the amendment, the final motion up.
Just, Madam Clerk, you can just alert me when I'm ready to go.
Yep, we're just pushing that over. Chair Carr, we are ready to proceed with the voting.
Great. Okay, thanks, Council. We've conferred with you to make sure that you have all been able to read the motion thoroughly. So we have already had a request from Councillor Swanson to sever out. So you'll see that there's a double A to begin with. That's one. There's a vote there, but there is a large A and then a small A and then a small B. And it is the small, it is the large A, small B, in which we are severing 1 and 4 for Councillor Swanson. And Councillor DiGenova, my understanding is that we are going to sever all of the large A subsection A, so 1 through 4 for you. And we're going to sever the large A, small b, the rest of that, but that will happen after we sever first the 1 and 4 for Councillor Swanson, and then we'll do the rest of it, and you have a chance to then vote as a severed motion there. We're severing out the large B for Councillor DiGenova as well, and the large E and the large J. Seeking confirmation on that, councillors? Okay. And after that, then I'll have the floor for Councillor Bly to do an amendment to the whereases. So let's start the voting procedure. We are starting with the severed sections, right, Madam Clerk? Do you want to start with
Yes, that's correct. We should start with A sub 1. So we'll highlight that on the screen.
Sorry, so yes, large A, all of the large A subsection A. Is that where we're starting?
A1.
A1.
AA1?
No, nobody's wanting that. All of A, subsections 1 through 5, can be handled all together. It's just the severing out of A, large A, small a.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so everybody clear? We're now voting on large A, small a, that whole section.
Point of privilege, Madam Chair.
Yes?
Could we have that made bigger so we can read it on screen? Great. And sorry, can you just repeat?
And so it's everything highlighted in yellow that you're seeing now. The large A.
Perfect. Thank
small you. A, Roman numerals 1 to 5.
That's super. Thank you.
Okay. Everybody clear? Great. Let's proceed with the vote on that then.
Vote assist for me, please, Chair Carr.
Yes.
In opposition.
Okay. And Councillor
Swanson here, vote assist in favor.
Okay, great. Okay, so that passes with Councillor DiGenova in opposition. Councillors, I'm going to ask that you make sure you keep a record of your votes clearly, because once we get a amendment to the whereases, we have to go through all of these votes again in a final vote. So, so anyway, we've just finished that first vote. Madam Clerk, we are now moving to the large A subsection small b. And are you going to sever out 1 and 4 of that? That's a request by Councillor Swanson.
Yes, that's correct. We'll do 1B1 first.
Okay. Is everybody clear on council? Large A, small b, number 1. In highlighted in yellow on your screen.
Swanson here. I don't know what's happening to my Creston, but it's I'm voting no against that. If I can get a vote assist, thanks.
Okay. Okay. So that. Oh, Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist on that?
Yes, I think so much. You're talking about B1?
That's right.
It starts with facilitate decampment?
Correct.
Yes, I will be voting in favor of that.
Okay, so that has passed with 3 in opposition. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Swanson, and Councillor Boyle. Okay, we are now moving to in the same section, which is a small under capital A, small b, number 4, which was another request beginning with the words facilitate work between engineering, etc. Okay. Oh, Councillor DiGenova?
No, please. Mark me in opposition.
Okay. So that passes with 3 in opposition. Mayor Stewart, Councillor DiGenova, and Councillor Swanson. Okay. We are now, I think, moving to all of the rest of B. So capital A, small b, all of the rest, which is section 2, 3, and 5.
Can we see it on the screen, please?
As we won't vote until we can see it on the screen. Thank you. Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist on that?
Yes, in opposition, please.
Councillor Hardwick, you haven't yet voted? Okay. That passes with 1 in opposition, Councillor DiGenova. So, Madam Clerk, are we now going to capital B, which Councillor DiGenova wanted severed? Is that right?
That's correct.
So council, again, that's large, capital B.
And point of privilege, a vote, if I could get
Yes.
an abstention for myself. Thank you very much, Chair Garth.
Okay. Councillor Hardwick, you haven't yet voted? And, okay, that vote passes with no one in opposition. So we are now moving to capital E. Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist?
Yes, I'll be voting in opposition to this because I know our staff already do this.
Yes. Okay, so you don't need any words, thank you.
Oh, so sorry, thanks.
Okay, that passes with 2 in opposition, Councillors DiGenova and Councillors Hardwick. And finally, we are moving to capital J. Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist?
Yes, I do. Thanks.
And
I will vote in favor of that. Sorry, it was on the wrong ones of my list in trying to sever them out since we're not going through them individually, but I will vote in favor. Thank you.
That was unanimous then. Okay, Council, we are now going to vote on everything we didn't vote on. So that would be capital A, the first clause. It will be capital C, capital D, capital F, capital G, capital H, and capital I. Everybody clear about that? And should be seeing A, C, D, F, G, H, I. Councillor DiGenova, vote assist on that?
In favor. Thanks so much.
Okay, and those pass, all of those pass unanimously. Okay, that's it for the voting. And now, Councillor Bly, if you would like to put yourself on the floor with the amendment that you had suggested, or that you would table on the whereases. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so very briefly, it's adding an 8th whereas clause, and I'll read it for anybody listening along. The city should respond to the concurrent homeless emergency, overdose crisis, and pandemic health emergency informed by the Emergency Management Framework for Canada, which defines a disaster as a social phenomenon that results when a hazard intersects with a vulnerable community in a way that exceeds or overwhelms the community's ability to cope and may cause serious harm to the safety, health, welfare, property, or environment of people. and the City of Vancouver's emergency response, which states, in case of a disaster, the city will reopen reception and group lodging centers to look after people who have had to leave their homes. And this is being included as a way to underscore the urgent nature that we're in as it relates to Strathcona Park specifically, and of course homelessness across the city, and will be important when it comes to any conversations with senior levels of government as to our urgency to act quickly and need to understand their role in terms of funding and other important parts that they'll play in helping the city resolve this issue, but that action is not, non-action is not an option.
Great.
And that's it.
Thank
Seconder,
you. Seconder. Okay, thank you. Moving on to there's speakers to this. So, Councillor Swanson, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any problem with saying it's an emergency. The issue that I have is with opening reception centers. I mean, that's fine if you have a home and it's like an earthquake or something, but these are people who have no homes and they need something better than a shelter, especially during COVID when shelters are sources of infection. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Seeing no one else on the list to speak, Council, if I could have Madam Clerk take us to a vote on this whereas.
And before you have to ask, Chair Carr, point of privilege?
Yes.
In
Go
favor,
ahead.
please.
Thank you. Okay, that has passed with one councillor in opposition, which is Councillor Kirby-Young. Okay, now I understand from the clerk that we have amended a whereas, but that requires us to actually vote on the entire motion again.
Point of privilege, Chair Carr?
Yes.
If I could have my votes registered the same as I had voted previously on each of the letters that were severed, that might just be easiest.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the clerks can do that. But thank you for that. But maybe it will be faster. So, let's see. Sorry. The clerk has informed me.
Otherwise, I haven't changed my mind.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's important to go through each vote, Councillor. So we will proceed. Okay. Okay. So we are now going back again, and Madam Clerk, I think it's capital A, small a, the whole thing. If we all can vote again on that, please. Councillor DiGenova, do you need a...
In opposition, please.
Thank you. Yeah, good. That passes with one in opposition, Councillor DiGenova. We are now going to capital A, small b, number 1. Councillor DiGenova?
In favor, please.
Okay. And Councillor Wiebe, you have not voted yet. And Councillor Kirby-Young, you have not voted. Okay. That passes with 3 in opposition. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Swanson, Councillor Boyle. We're now going to capital A, small b, number 4.
I'm sorry, Chair Carr. I
Yes?
just wanted to make sure you had me in opposition
Yes.
for A, subsection B, subsection 4. Thank you.
In opposition? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now subsection 4. Well, that's what we're doing. Sorry. we are now doing that, and so go ahead. Your vote's being recorded in opposition. Councillor Bly? Okay. Okay. And we have that has passed with 3 in opposition: Mayor Stewart, Councillor DiGenova, and Councillor Swanson. Okay, we are now doing all of the rest of B, which is, capital A, small b. So that would be sections 2, 3, and 5. No further that. Councillor DiGenova?
In opposition.
Yep, thank you. Okay, that has passed with 1 in opposition, Councillor DiGenova. Okay, we are now going to capital B.
Point of privilege, and please mark me as abstaining.
Yep, okay. Okay, that has, Councillor Kirby-Young, you haven't yet voted? That is passed with no 1 in opposition. We are now moving to capital E. Councillor DiGenova?
In opposition.
Great. That passed with 2 in opposition, Councillor DiGenova and Councillor Hardwick. Councillor DiGenova, we had severed J, but I believe you indicated that it was by mistake.
Yes, yeah.
You don't need to do it? Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. So, Council, we are going to vote on all of the remaining clauses, which is capital AA, capital C, capital D, capital F, capital G, capital H, capital I, and J. And Councillor DiGenova, do you need a vote assist?
Yes, in favor, please.
Great. And that passes unanimously. Council, I believe that we have finished our voting. Madam Clerk, is there anything else I need to do on this?
You're all done. You can turn over the chair back to the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, the chair is now in your hands.
Thank you very much, Chair Carr. Thank you for all the great work there. That was a tricky one. And Council, all I have to do now is ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Hardwick.
Okay, I think I got a Councillor Hardwick moved with seconded Councillor DeGenova. All in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. Great. Thanks very much, Council. And I don't think there's anything else, Clerk. We're done for the day.
Yes, you are. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good chairing, Adrian.
Oh, thanks, Jean.
Yeah, really, Adrian.